Okay, here we have Carly Wingerter, the general manager of QuartzAnalytics, the US distributor for the food sector in the US, as I said. So I give you the floor, Carly. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Yeah, thank you. Can you see everyone see my screen okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, you guys, a lot of great content. So some of the stuff I might breeze over a little bit faster because we had already some great insights there. Um, I'm Carly, I'm the director of sales of QuartzAnalytics. That's a crystal filtration company. And crystal filtration has been in business for over 30 years. So you'll hear from myself and then my coworker, Jennifer. So the beginning of our journey with CDR, we purchased our first food lab around 2011, and we essentially needed a rapid method for testing oil in our lab. We didn't have any intentions to distribute the analyzer. We really needed it to test for FFAs before and after the treatment with our patented product FilSorb, which is an oil treatment powder. Just a quick description of FilSorb, if you're unaware, that FilSorb it's essentially a white powder that's being added into dirty cooking oil. It reduces free fatty acids, color bodies, other impurities, rancidity factors, and it's filtered out. It's very, very heavily used in the US, Canada, Mexico, and it's made its way into Europe. So we really needed something to measure before and after. And we started out with the good old version of the food lab, the orange version back in the day. And it was extremely useful, right? So our engineers started taking it with them to all of the trials for free fatty acids. So we would pack it up in like a suitcase with wheels and we would take it there. And this basically was to prove the concept of FilSorb on site at the facilities, right? Food lab works so quickly. But when we went to one of our first FilSorb trials, the customer said, FilSorb's great, but we actually want this analyzer. So this was just the beginning and the uptick of everything. So
Marius.
the beginning of us, we didn't have any formal sales representatives for the food lab. We did have engineers that were working on the FilSorb side of our business, and our owners decided that one day we would employ two part-time college kids to help sell this, and two college kids that were going to school for chemistry. We didn't know a whole bunch, and both of us are your presenters today. And I'm only telling you this just to really show the humble beginnings that we started with, and just to give all of you guys some encouragement when you're first starting, because we had very humble beginnings. We made so many mistakes. We had unhappy customers, wasted sales calls, showing up to sales calls when the plug back in the day, we used to have a converter for EU to US plugs. Something happened to it. Regions going bad, pricing issues, part number mix-ups, just lack of experience. If you name it, we had it. If it happens to you, keep moving on because there's a light at the end of that. It's a learning curve. So how it's going now, 11 years later from the beginning of the uptick, we are a team of 13 that strictly focus on really selling CDR and supporting it. And I say supporting it because that is a huge end of it. It's not just the sales team. And we've been heavily involved in multiple food industries. We've spoken at many conferences, educational seminars, published studies, and really are consulting some of the largest food producers in the US here on their cooking oil protocol. So we've sold over 900 analyzers in the past 10 years. So overall, probably over 1,000. It's going well. And just QuartzAnalytics was formed as a branch off of crystal filtration just to kind of hone in on who we are as a company to target our customers. So this year, we have sold 54 Food Lab tops, 80 Food Lab juniors, and that is the amount of reagents we've sold. So that's per test kit that's gone out. So this is for 2024. And this is what our analyzer sold over the years looks like. So can see back, we've had in the past, you saw Jamie, he had some really good years and some decreases, and we've seen the same. It's just kind of the nature of the business. But what I really want to make sure everyone focuses on is the fact that this is not your the big target rate. This is like the initial investment into the stock market. What you really are excited about is, like Jamie said, the interest that you make off of it, let's say. So this is the reagent sold. So that always steadily increases. And it's good. So I broke down our food lab sales by industry, and we have a lot of small niche industries, and we've actually honed these in a lot to consolidate them. So um, you can see here that over a third of our sales do go into the frying oil market. So that's snack foods, potatoes, fried veggies, straws, nuts. Um, and while we spend a lot of time on this market in the beginning, this is not where we spend the majority of our time now, even though it is a third of our sales. So these here, the numbers you see, this is for 2024 only, and it includes reagents and analyzer sales put together. So I would say the majority of our time this year for these sales has been spent in probably the oil manufacturer industry. And of course, we spent a lot of time in pet food building that market up. So if you take a look at this, where our sales are is not where our time is spent. Our time is spent in our growing markets, and we have established our other markets. Okay, and here are some of our references. This is some of them. We have many, many customers. So this is just to give you guys an idea of kind of who we're working with. Again, we're open also to any collaboration. So if you are trying to work with one of these companies in your country, please let us know. All right, and then we'll kind of go into some of the marketing strategies here. So, as we spoke about earlier, the real-time analysis advantage is huge. So when we're working with frying and roasting facilities, they need to monitor their free fatty acid levels, and a lot of the facilities here and in EU just put in some new regulations on anisotine level, so they need to monitor it in real time quickly. And the food lab obviously allows for it, right? And free fatty acid can be done pretty quick via the titration method, but anisotine value cannot. Another example of this is pet food producers and oil manufacturers, ingredient suppliers, etc. There's a constant flow in of products happening, so they need to be able to test right away, right? So being able to test on site, huge advantage there. And some of the examples are really the sales tactics that you can use. So these are all examples of things that we've seen, standing at a plant and a load of meat meal has just arrived to a pet food production facility, and they cannot unload that truckload of meat meal until they have a confirmed peroxide value that's within spec. So it has to be done fast right away because you have refrigerated trucks lined up, and typically in the US here you have an hour to unload until you get a kind of a demurrage fee. So this is part of it. It needs to be done quickly. A yellow grease manufacturer, they must meet the anisotine level specification in order to unload the shipment and accept it. This is another example of needing it quickly, and it has to be within spec. So just these are some examples of what we use to sell the analyzer. A potato or crisp making facility, let's say they have a 12-week shelf life on all of their products. And if they're fried in oil with a FFA over 0.4 or anisotine level of 10, the shelf life decreases to 8 weeks, right? So you are constantly going through potatoes being fried quickly, and you need to be able to test those levels immediately so you're aware of what you're putting out there so you don't get the complaints later on. All right, so our competition and real time, so you're competing with the titration method. for the most part, right? There's a few other companies out there that you're competing with. Test is one. Spoke about Testo a little bit, and an outside lab can obviously be another competition. So this is an example here of the time it takes to run a titration, the cost, the chemical disposal, and then the error that could occur. I will say, though, that honestly, the majority of our customers did not switch over to us because of real-time testing, right? A lot of them have a lab. They're using the titration method on site. A lot of it had to do with the inconsistency that occurs when you are running the titration because it can be very subjective. We've had many sales off of the Food Lab's ability to give fast results, but it's not always the main target there. Yesterday, I visited the largest food producer here in the US, and they just simply don't want to run titrations. They just don't like dealing with it. So call it the new generation or call it, just needing some faster test results, but that was their main thing was we just want to get rid of all of our glassware for titration. So they wanted to switch over to Food Lab. It's really dependent. All right. And so now I'm going to go through some of the strategies that we use for client acquisition. And I broke it down into 3 stages: reputation, the mastery of the markets, and then customization. And this has been the theme of our sales throughout the years. So I would say the beginning started with reputation, then we went on to mastery of markets, and now we're really in this customization phase to try to suit all types of customers. So with that, we are obviously still focused on all 3 of these, but these are just some of them. Huge right off the bat, and this will never change, is a customer-centric mentality. So we need fast and effective and knowledgeable customer service. And so I will put a plug out to our customer service individuals. They are some of the best. So never take for granted having just great tech people on your team. Your home-based people that are interfacing with the customers and ordering, they are key. And on our team, we have some awesome people. So if we were all, if all the technical people in our company were out for the day, our customer service people could probably answer the majority of the questions that were asked, to be honest. And then vice versa. If our customer service people are out, our technical chemical people are able to take orders. And this is just building a great team is so much more effective than the opposite. So you want it fast. When someone calls, 99% of the time, we want that person to hear a voice on the other end of the phone and get some level of assistance immediately. So if they need an order, a question about an analyzer, we are also always available for a video call. So someone could call and say, hey, I'm having a hard time with this test. And within 5 minutes, we could get them up on a screen, get a video running, explain it to them. We have special cameras that we had made for us that, kind of hover over the analyzer so we can see it and do some testing. Few people on this call do those every single day just to give a great example of how to test and make it really simple. We always try to ship orders the next day. Sometimes this is at a fault to us where we've just built up this customer service and customers expect it, but we try to stay with it because if you can make it easy for people to order, they're going to keep reordering. The simpler you can keep the process for them, the better. So if they need to buy with a credit card, if they need to pay with a purchase order, we want it simple, we want it set up and streamlined. Nothing that could cause a delay. We maintain a reagent stock. This is key. And especially with the customer service that we've built up, our customers fully anticipate that they can call us and get an overnighted order and that we will do it. So we have to maintain a reagent stock. Again, we have someone that works in our office that just monitors this so well and does a great job, and it's definitely worth it. Always following up too often. And staying calm always. So customers, right, they're spending money and they're trying to run a test. A lot of customers aren't chemists, so they're very frustrated when they're testing, and it's just important to stay calm. So overall, number one is just having a reliable, trustworthy, hardworking, respectful, and passionate team. Every single person on our team loves the product, enjoys the product. All right, so we'll start with reputation. So we learned very quickly that word of mouth is worth 100 times more than however much you will spend on digital ads ever. So it was just key right away. We learned that the reputation was what we needed. A lot of the people in the US worry about the analyzer being produced in Italy. So when we noticed those concerns come up, we immediately had to ensure that they were so confident in our company that they didn't have to worry about the fact that the analyzer was being produced in Italy. And so whatever country you're in, right, build that up so they can be fully reliant that they're not going to have to wait, right? So from the Italy to the US, it's a long shipment process. So they need to know that there's going to be support on their time zone here. So we wanted people that owned a food lab to only have positive things to say. And our opinion was that if someone owned an analyzer and it wasn't useful to them, it would only create bitterness. And so I put it here, like, think of the unused gym equipment that you have staring at you, that you're not working out on, and that doesn't make you feel good. And so we didn't want an analyzer ever sitting anywhere that wasn't being used because they spent a lot of money on it. That didn't make them feel good. So we would just go out of our way to train people to use the equipment and limit the negative opinions. And usually they came from handling errors. So, becoming really good at saying you're not using a pipette correctly is key, and really good at saying it right, because nobody wants to hear that. So you have to say it with a lot of class, and we got good at that. So if we ever, we always wanted to make sure that analyzers that were out there, they stayed in use for a long period of time, right? We spoke about that compound interest, and that really is putting out analyzers and the residual reagent sales. We didn't love to offer refunds to customers, so we would jump through hoops, give free reagents, do anything we could to get them relying on the analyzer again. So and of course it happens, someone wants to return the analyzer. I don't think we've accepted a return in, it's been over 5 or 6 years. We've always gotten the customer back to using the analyzer, but it's not to say that we haven't had someone that, we maybe made some mistakes on our upfront sales work with them and we needed to take the analyzer back, and that just is what it is. It's better to have a good reputation versus not offering up that refund. But again, we haven't refunded someone in a very long time. So the best way to avoid the bad reputation is upfront sales work. So a full understanding of what they're testing, personnel using the equipment, training them. Did we explain the use of the sensitivity of using the pipettes? Going through everything. And a lot of this for us is sending samples to us for us to test and understand how is the customer going to be testing. We deal with a lot of weird products, extractions, and we always think it's better. Send us the sample, send it to us blind. Don't tell us the results. If you have third-party results, don't tell us. Let us test and we'll give you the results back. And you can have all the confidence in what you're purchasing. And then phase 2 really came into mastery of the markets. So targeting specific markets, understanding what markets could use the analyzer, what problems were they having. So it came down to what tests could we offer them that solved their problem. Were they using a third party to test these, or a lot of our customers were not testing to begin with. So that is huge for peroxide and anisodine. We wrote a ton of papers on the benefits of measuring anisodine value and peroxide in order to really explain to them why they should be testing for it. What is primary oxidation? What is secondary oxidation? And how it benefits you to have those tests. So we wanted to know who the major companies were in the market, and then we needed to know their parent companies and then their suppliers and their customers. So it started off, let's say we're selling to a large oil manufacturer well, where are they getting their, raw materials from, or who are they selling to? A lot of people, we started with one place in the supply chain and we went back and then we went forward. And then we dedicated a person on our team to mastering certain markets. And you'll hear from Jennifer here shortly. And she was someone who we really said, okay, this market, which we'll speak about, pet food, this is complicated. There's a lot of players in the game. There's a lot of different different products coming in and out, different extraction methods that could be used. And it was a lot. So we dedicated one technical person to it and just allowed them to really hone in on it. And then she expanded everyone else's knowledge of it afterwards once she had some. And we've done this with other markets. We did this with dairy just the same, and beverage when we worked in that too. So we also created troubleshooting guides that were tailored to the individual markets and the tests. So another recommendation on your team is if you have a digital design person, and you'll hear from her next, creating tailored troubleshooting guides is so useful. And it also limits the time that you are spending having to have interaction with the customer. So if you can send them a digital file and they can work through the problem on their own, they're going to be that much better off, right? So teach a man to fish, don't hand them the fish. It's a useful tool. So I highly recommend those guides. Videos, we've done it all. However we can streamline it, we want to. And then finally, our last phase is customization. And this is the phase we're in right now. So I think, you heard earlier, some of the markets, you'll see a plateau. It's going to happen. And we had to overcome that plateau by starting to really customize for these more difficult markets. So we're working now with a ton of sample matrices that are, complicated. Maybe they have an extremely low fat percentage, seasonings in them. They need special extraction, custom calibrations. We do a lot of custom calibrations here, and it's just helped us to get into these markets. It's not easy to do, and I don't recommend taking it lightly. It does require a lot of testing. Again, we have an amazing digital design person on our team, and they help create all of these, reports and procedures to help with everyone. And it does more than you guys can imagine, really, having just nice looking documents. And we do a ton of testing in our lab. So we honestly have a lot of people that work in our lab just running titrations over and over, testing on the analyzer. And we couldn't do our sales without those individuals, because we need people testing to understand, what are we working with? What are we looking at? Some of the samples we get in are wild. I mean, they smell, they are full of odd things, and there's some sample prep that has to be done, and that takes time. And we'll never tell a customer that we can't test their type of product up front. So of course, there's some products that, you can't, they don't fit the food lab, but we want to really explore it first before we say we can't test that type of product. So send it to our lab, let us try it out, let us work with it. And sometimes, okay, but normally there's something we can do. So, and next you're going to hear about one of those success stories of a product that, originally we didn't know if we could test, and now it's taken on a life of its own. So I need to pass this over to Jennifer, and you guys can hear from her next. So I will stop sharing.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Is that all good?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a second. I put you, Jennifer, in evidence. What's happening? Okay. Okay, here we are. Okay, sorry. Okay. Here we are. Thank you, Jennifer.
All right.
Go ahead.
Perfect. So now we're going to talk about pet food and the work that we've done specifically with the pet food industry, and how we've kind of tailored the CDR FoodLab specifically to their needs. So to start, rendered meat meal is what is the backbone of pretty much all kibble formulations in the pet food industry. And their current quality control standard for measuring oxidation is peroxide value. So although peroxide value is the control standard for measuring oxidation, there's no standardization around how to actually test that in meat meals. So unlike typical fats and oils, there's no official method or guidelines for testing meat meals. The American Oil Chemist Society, AOCS, has an official method for testing fats and oils, but it doesn't have any guidelines in there about how to extract the fat from meat meals to then test it. And due to this lack of standardization, even third-party accredited labs have discrepancies in the results for the same samples. So this issue not only creates obviously strained relationships between the renderers who create the meat meals, but also the pet food producers, because they're getting two different peroxide value results, and then they'll send it to a third-party lab, and that's a third result that is completely off as well. So it's a lot of back and forth, and it is estimated to cost the industry millions and millions of dollars because they're getting loads rejected, whether wrongfully or not. So how we got involved was through the Pet Food Alliance group. So Pet Food Alliance is a group of industry leaders and members that have started to get together to talk through all of the issues that the pet food industry sees. So you have the renderer side and you have the producer side. So multiple times a year, they come together and meet, and they just have very honest conversations saying, here's the issues that we see in the industry, whether it's with, the people actually purchasing the food, or if it's with the other companies they work with, like the renderers. And one of the main issues that kept coming up was measuring peroxide value. So through the Pet Food Alliance, they put together a large study. So they wanted to just look at specifically testing peroxide value in the meat meals. So luckily, Tyson was at this time involved with Pet Food Alliance, and they had invited us to participate in this study. So during the study, we tested 75 meat meal samples over 2 days. Various methods were used during the study, including the AOCS official method, and then the extraction method that was used along with that was petroleum ether. There's also auto titrators running that as well. They sent the labs to multiple third-party labs to see what their results were. And then also we saw some of our competitors. So Safe Test is one of our big ones. Fox 2 was also ran. And then of course we had the CDR FoodLab there. So one of the main things that I mentioned before that we saw in the study was the differences that we saw in the third-party results. So there was a large variation between laboratories, and that all came down to pretty much like the extraction methods that they were using, because they were all a little different. And that again goes back to the standardization of the test method. But a highlight for the food lab during the study was that there was a very strong correlation between the AOCS official method using the ether extraction and the food lab. And during the study, since there wasn't a meat meal calibration curve created yet, we had used the Flowers calibration curve at the time. So then using all of the data from this study, we were able to then put together a customized calibration curve specifically for meat meal. So after we created this curve, Tyson started to implement it at multiple laboratories. And at these sites, they also had the AOCS official method that they were running. So they were running the AOCS method with the ether extraction side by side with the food lab, just double checking everything. And the results looked great and they were super excited about it. So from there, they started recommending it to a lot of their customers. So now we have multiple, not only meat meal renders, but pet food producers that use the food lab. And the renders love when the pet food producers also have a food lab, because they can send out their meat meals and know that when they get it, they're going to test it the same method and get an acceptable result, because when they tested it, it was at an acceptable result as well. So it has helped a lot there. And also, in addition to helping the relationships between the renders and pet food producers, also, of course, the ease and just all the benefits of the CDR Food Lab. So, of course, we know that it is very easy to use, but specifically for pet food, the alternative methods are very complex and confusing. Even if you have an auto titrator set up, you still have to do the petroleum ether extraction, which takes a lot of time, and it's really expensive to get a rotovap and all of that to do that. And that also comes down to the minimal sample prep time. So as Carly mentioned earlier, when truckloads come in, they want to be able to test that and accept the load, unload it within the hour. In the CDR Food Lab, you're able to really test it within 15 minutes. So from when the load arrives, you can get a result within 15 minutes with the food lab. And you can test up to, depending on your centrifuge size and what analyzer you have, 6 samples at a time for our centrifuge. So that is awesome. Another additional benefit is it's not only able to test the meat meals, it's also able to test the fats and oils that they're adding into their kibble, and it's able to test raw meats. So we see now that the pet food industry is really diversifying and it's not just kibble anymore. So if they're a producer that does kibble, but also more like raw meats or freeze-dried meat, they're still able to utilize the food lab. So it's multifaceted. So with that being said, some of our current customers are the meat meal renders like Tyson Foods and Pilgrims. We also have some actual pet food producers like Wilbur Ellis. They specialize in creating specialty diets. And then we also have quite a few antioxidant companies that also have food labs, and they use that and able to determine dosage and recommend the antioxidant use. So the relationships that we've built with the pet food industry have been amazing, and we're able to continue to learn with them and just provide solutions for different things that they need. So it has been a fun journey. That is it.
Okay, thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you very much, Carly. And of course, we have a few questions about your presentation. For example, we have a question from Jamie Duncan, and he asks, how do you generate new business, incoming leads, or through cold calls, or and the sales visits? So how do you do about that?
Yeah, so I would say, we spoke about word of mouth, and a lot of that is it. So it's going back to our other customers, asking questions. The majority, though, Jamie, like you spoke of, is the incoming leads that we're receiving online, but that isn't the majority of our sales. The majority of our sales is coming through the word of mouth, reaching out to people. But new business that is just completely, you know, brand new would come through online cold calling. Yeah, you want every salesperson to cold call, right? But it's pretty ineffective. And I was surprised when you said your rate of return for the leads that you have coming in. In the last year, I just did a quick report. You know, we had about 800 leads and about, you know, it was less than 300 converted over into a sale in the end. So if that gives you kind of a ratio of what our leads look like, but
I think mine was very specific to the frying oils sector. It would be more like that if we looked at all the food type leads generally.
oh, okay.
So your sales work, so you're visiting, following up, and demonstrating the machine is the vast majority of what your salespeople are working on from then your marketing and your word of mouth related leads that have prompted that. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say so. And one of the number one drivers that is less traceable is what Jenny spoke about, speaking at AOCS. We also speak at a few colleges, and that is a way that we're generating new business because those people are then going out and spreading the word because those are kind of the giants in the industry, right? So the main people that are advising others on the proper test methods. So it's getting to those people. And then the new leads generate kind of the trickle down effect from there.
Yeah. Thank you. No, we can't hear you, Simone.
Yeah.
Now you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Carly. We have another question from Andres Seaman from Lettony. And he asks how the custom calibration is done at distributor side. Is it possible to build local applications by the distributor itself? Yeah, the question is very important, and the answer is yes, of course. We have, of course, here it's very important to understand what the customer is using as quality control. So if he's using an internal method or an external method, we can, of course, adjust a little bit the calibration pretty easily. We have specific protocols that we are currently using with different distributors. So we support all the distributors in doing that without any problems with all our experience in making this kind of work. So no problem. The answer is yes. And Carly, what do you? Of course, Carly and all the team, they are very expert in making these adjustments. So they work on their own. But of course, for all the others, we as a CDR, we are available in helping everyone about this job. Carly, if you can say something about this.
Yeah, of course, we do a ton of work on our own, but we also rely really heavily on CDR for so many questions. So we go back to them, we send them our data files, ask them their opinion, and converse back and forth. So they're our best support. So
yeah. Thank you very much, Carly. I think we don't have other. Okay. Let me see. Okay, yeah, there is. Okay, there is a question from Ebru. Thank you, Ebru. Okay, she thanks for the great presentation. I have a question on pet foods. Which method or type of instruments are generally used to provide the fat percentage value? And do you have any specific case which is influenced by inconsistent fat percentage values? So the question is more related to the, because as you know, about the FoodLab, you have to provide the fat percentage in order to get the results. So she's asking about possible problems from this side. So did you find anything about this, Jennifer or Carly?
So I haven't seen too many issues with the fat percentage, typically because when they're testing, they're going to either use the fat percentage that the COA says when it's incoming, and then it's going to be the same fat percentage that the render uses. So they'll match up good. But of course, they're going to want a reliable way to test for fat percentage, because if they're testing it at saying it's 8%, but really it's like 25%, that is going to give a variation in result. Typically, I do see that they just use the COAs most of the time for that, but they'll also have different internal methods. I think a common one is like an NIR machine in the lab. But yeah, I haven't seen that be a huge issue.
And I'm convinced the fat percentage that people are using is probably normally wrong, but they've just become accustomed to being comfortable with the fat percentage that they're using. And if they're consistent, they're going to have a consistent data built up. So the lab I was in yesterday, they were just aware and comfortable with it being a variation or a range.
Yeah. And with pet food, they have a typical limit of 10 for peroxide value. And I will say, nobody in the pet food industry knows where that number came from at all. So I don't also know where that originated. So as long as they're getting a result that's less than 10 when it's incoming, they're usually pretty good. So if it's in the ballpark of the fat percentage that the meat meal actually is, then they should be all set. So if it's between 11 and 12%, that's okay.
And I think it's good to mention that we often will do some testing at 100% fat and run a back calculation later. So if they don't have the possibility to test the fat percentage in their lab, they could always send a couple samples out to get the range that they want, and you can test at 100 and run the calculation. So.
Okay, thank you very much, Carly and Jennifer. There is another question from Jabbar, Saudi Arabia, and he asked, what challenges normally Carly and Jennifer faced while convincing to sell the instrument? I mean, common challenges. So if you can tell something about this.
That it works, that it's trustworthy. So this is why we do the blind testing, where we have them send us samples. They don't believe, people just don't believe that it works, right? So especially if they've been running the titration for a long time, they just have a hard time believing that it works. And it's more noticeable in those that have been in the industry longer and they're used to the older methods. I find that the upcoming generation is more comfortable with tech, so we don't have those questions as often, but just proof of that it works would be the biggest hurdle. Jenny, I don't know if you would.
100%.
Okay. So thank you very much, guys. It was a very interesting presentation. All were very interesting presentations.